Did I make it? Am I on time? Whew. I don't know why I scheduled it for 3 minutes. They pick up the Jeep. Yep. Oh, sorry. What do we got for you today? We've got a whole lot of... Well, fuck it. Let's get into the first video of the day. And this is really going to set the tone of who I'm going to fucking talk about today. Because our fucking great president, or former president of the United fucking States, decided it would be a good idea to pardon this certain individual who's responsible for the death of millions. Millions of people. So, if you're here, instead of watching some drama, you're about to see some drama that I am about to, expose. Again.
Sad little man sitting deep in a lie. He's dead in his soul, but he'll keep you alive. Do what he says, not what he do, 'cause the truth is for him and the lie is for you. Sad little man, but he's treated like a god, as the faithless pray to a fake and a fraud. Worship the man, pledge to his word. One shot, two shot, now you get a third. Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can. Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man. Sad little man, gonna trap you like a dog, put your head in a net while they eat you raw. Don't ask why, just comply, 'cause fear is the drug that the doctor prescribed. Sad little man, you can watch him on the news, preaching to his choir while they learn the rules. Some feel safe and some feel healed, but they'll all hold his hand as he makes the kill. Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can. Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man. Sad little man, and he wants your kids. Some might live while the rest get sick. So put them to the test and listen for the yell. When the truth comes out, he's gonna burn in hell. Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can. Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man. You can't fool me, you sad little man.
Don't know why this was set to private. Sad little man. Holy shit, I didn't mute that one. Hey, anyway, since I forgot to put this shit on YouTube, give me 2 seconds. You guys are going to listen to this song again on Rumble. None of you. One of you, maybe. Let me go back and set this fucking thing. Cover up. Oh, I can't do it here. Lame. Manually. Sad little man. Where the fuck is it? Sorry, guys. Apparently, either get kicked off YouTube for a day, or it seems like I forgot how to use it. Jesus. There it is. Restrictions. No. There we go. There we go. Welcome back to the episode of the Ministry of Truth. Fuck it. Let's get straight into the video, since I was live for about 4 minutes, 55 seconds before I realized I had it set to private on YouTube. So, without further ado, can you guess who we're going to talk about today? The main topic for me today. Because one cocksucker is particular that I've never liked and should never have been pardoned. We'll talk about that guy today. And who? Guess who?
Sad little man sitting deep in a lie. He's dead in his soul, but he'll keep you alive. Do what he says, not is for him and the lie is for you. Sad little man, but he's treated like a god, as the faithless prey to a fake and a fraud. Worship the man, pledge to his word. One shot, two shot, now you get a third. Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can.
What up, Yeti?
Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man. Sad little man, gonna trap you like a dog, put your head in a net while they eat you raw. Don't ask why, just comply, 'cause fear is the drug that the doc prescribe. Sad little man, you can watch him on the news, preaching to his choir while they learn the rules. Some feel safe and some feel healed, but they'll all hold his hand as he makes the kill. Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can. Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man. Sad little man, and he wants your kids. Some might live while the rest get sick, so put him to the test and listen for the yell. When the truth comes out, he's gonna burn in hell. Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can.
Joe Biden fucked that up. Oh wait, he's gonna burn in hell. Yeah. Never mind. He will burn in hell.
Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man. You can't fool me, you sad little
man. Whoa. Good morning, ladies. Well, it's afternoon for me, but if you're, on the mountain and other side, good morning, good afternoon, and what we're going to talk about today, in case you didn't miss it. Yesterday, the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States, the Donald J. Trump, and I was streaming it, and, well, got a copyright strike. So I was like, oh, I wonder if this is affecting all the other streamers as well. So I go to check. Not a single one. Marine Rapper, Cartier's, fuck it, you name it, they were on. Even Devin Gibson. But not me. I got a copyright strike. Of course I appealed that shit. Like, I was streaming the inauguration, you stupid fucks. I didn't add the stupid fucks part. I wish I'd had. But I won the appeal, which, yay. So what am I about to do? I'm going to fucking try to get banned again. Just kidding. However, let's get into some news stories. Dun 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 dun. I don't have that fucking big news
push
break.
for mass deportations as migrants.
As of the 20th of January of 2025, if you are in America and you do not have a legal status, legal by mean legal is you came here legally and did the process. But if you came here, across the border, and just disappeared into the system, you're done. No, man, Yeti, I was switching back and forth through like all different ones, and it was whatever. Fuck them, dude.
It's deeply concerned on what is
No, somebody else was restreaming C-SPAN. That's why I went there.
to come. Major cities like Chicago are anticipating massive immigration raids that could begin at any moment. Elected leaders say they will do anything they can to protect the many immigrant communities.
Ripping those families apart, not acceptable to Americans. And we're going to stand up for them in the state of Illinois.
We want folks to know that they can still send their children to school.
Organizations like Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights telling anyone who is scared Don't answer the door if ICE agents come knocking, and memorize loved ones' phone numbers in case your phones are seized. Meantime, a long-anticipated threat in the fight against drug cartels has become a reality. President Trump officially designating them as foreign terrorist organizations. This decision previously facing opposition from Mexican leaders.
Look at the cartel's weapons. These are Operation Fast and Furious weapons. Look at the magazine. That's a motherfucking 5.56. And by the way, dude, you got too much finger on the trigger.
News Nation's Jorge Ventura joining us with more on this from Texas. Jorge, good morning to you. What does this new designation mean for the fight against these dangerous cartels?
Well, Marnie, good morning. Now, with this designation, Mexican cartels now will be joining a list of foreign terrorist organizations.
At the same time, I believe this was up in the northern part of the United States. They shot a fucking... Jesus fucking Christ, I am slacking today. Thank you, Batmom. I'm glad you showed up, but you were all getting all like excited and hot and bothered by just seeing my face. So let me do it one more time. Oh yeah. Anyway, back to the thing. I can't remember, it was northern border agent was shot in the neck and killed by an immigrant. Illegal immigrant crossing the border. Fucking Canadians. Or Chinese.
ISIS. It is a move that can actually make it politically easier for President Trump to send U.S. troops to Mexico without the approval of Congress. Now, this designation will target criminal organizations like the Sinaloa in the Jalisco New Generations cartels, which are involved in human trafficking.
By the way, cartels, you are now labeled a terrorist organization.
Trafficking, violent crimes, but also fueling the fentanyl crisis here in the United States. Now, under U.S. law, this designation does allow the U.S. government to freeze cartel money, ban travel, and punish anyone helping these criminal groups. Officials say that Mexican cartel operations across the border threaten U.S. safety and security. Now, Mexican leaders, including former President Lopez Obrador and President Sheinbaum, are opposing the move, fearing that it could justify U.S. military action on U.S. soil. And when asked whether U.S. forces could be sent to Mexico when he was signing those executive orders, Marnie, Trump did say that it could happen.
Oh, yeah, it's only a matter of time.
We'll just have to wait and see, Marnie.
Jorge, are there other groups that are targeted under this designation, or is it solely focused on the cartels?
So in that new executive order, President Trump is also targeting MS-13, that's the Salvadoran gang, as a foreign terrorist organization, but also adding the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. According to Border Czar Tom Holman, who did speak with News Nation back in December, he says that Tren de Aragua gang...
The bad Colorado sanctuary state guys, right?
And here in Texas, the Venezuelan gang already has an active presence in El Paso, Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. Now, according to President Trump, he says he will use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign criminal networks here in the United States through the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which does allow the U.S. government to round up foreigners who are citizens of a country that Congress has declared war on or has engaged in invasion. Now, President Trump on Monday also declared an official emergency on the southern border, saying, quote, cartels control vast territories just south of our southern border, effectively controlling who can and cannot travel to the United States from Mexico. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have tragically died from drug overdoses because of the illicit narcotics that have flowed across the southern border. For now, that the decision to intensify the battle against U.S. cartels will most likely get some pushback, Marnie, from President Claudia Sheinbaum, who says she does oppose it. And just about 30 minutes ago in her morning brief conference, she did say that Mexico is a sovereign nation, Marnie.
Oh. Okay.
All right, Jorge Ventura, thank you for that update. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television.
Mexico's a sovereign nation, guys. It's a sovereign nation. Give them the hand. I mean, I do love Mexican women, though.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is back on set, senior judicial analyst with...
For those of you who don't know, there were certain people that were locked up for the past 4 years? 4 years, maybe less. But they were locked up waiting for trial that never had any charges. But as of yesterday, by executive order,
The slew of pardons, you heard a couple of commutations listed there as well by the president.
The Tarrio prosecution was an egregious example of overreach by the Biden Justice Department because, as you said, he wasn't even physically there. He was prosecuted for words that he used miles and miles away.
Words.
In a group message setting.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, they went after him because of the folks that he was affiliated with. It was outrageous. The sentence was outrageous. This is a profound act, not just of mercy, but of justice.
There he is, yeah.
That Donald Trump has caused to happen.
The not white guy. The non-white.
This is a large number for a president to commute at one time. And as we were saying...
now that I have a question. Are we going to find out about the real Ray Epps? Tick-tock, you said the list was going to be out for Epstein. Tick-tock. Tick-tock.
During the break, the the pardoning wipes out the conviction. It will allow Mr. Tarrio to answer under oath. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? No. That's the extent to which it wipes it out. And if there's any penalties that he paid as a consequence of the conviction, that money comes from the federal treasury back to him, theoretically with interest.
Wow. But Donald Trump had promised this on the campaign, that this is something he would do. And that's different than what we saw President Biden when he last minute pardoned his family members and members of the House J6 committee.
I think that President Biden may have shot himself.
You know who President Biden didn't pardon? Himself and the vice president. Ouch.
On the foot with pardoning the family members. And here's why. When you accept a pardon, you have given up your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent on the subject matter of the pardon. This means that if a Republican congressional committee summons one of his relatives, those 5 or 6 whom he pardoned yesterday at 10:30 in the morning, puts their hand on the Bible, swears them to tell the truth, did you funnel money to your brother-in-law, Joe Biden?
Yes.
While he was vice president of the United States? They will have to answer that truthfully. And if they don't answer it truthfully, they can be incarcerated for contempt of court. And that incarceration is not pardonable.
Emma asked a great question that I'm going to parrot now. Why wouldn't President Biden, given the slew of pardons, preemptive pardons that he handed out to General Mark Milley, to Dr. Fauci, to the Sub-Select Committee on January 6th,
Let's not talk about Milley,
and the Biden family members,
fuck that dude.
Why didn't he issue one for himself?
You know, I wish I knew.
80 years old.
Even in his diminished capacity as of yesterday, he thought that was a bridge too far. I don't know.
They really going to prosecute an 80-year-old man?
Throughout history. No governor has done it. Not all governors can pardon, but most can.
This dude's got probably 2 months,
and no
3 months
has ever done.
You just think he's going at it already.
Right?
I mean, he's all in.
Was Jill on that list? I shouldn't laugh. No, she was not on she was not on the list.
No, but I also wonder, to your point, Judge, I mean, members of Congress have been very concerned about Dr. Fauci and his involvement in COVID, and also the January 6th committee and what they might have done and communicated with witnesses, and most importantly, the president's family.
What really pisses me off is they go all the way back to 2014. So nothing they've done since 14 matters.
And where they were making their money from. Wouldn't we have thought through, perhaps they'll be re-looking into this now that the Republicans
I'll tell you who you can ask about this. He knows more about it than anybody else. He's been here many times. James Comer, Congressman Comer. He's the chair of the House Oversight Committee. He's got a team of ex-FBI agents
and he's got a book
that work for him. They know where all the bodies are buried. They know the wire transfers of all the money. Now they can call the people whose accounts received those funds and ask them, and those people will have to answer. What will this do to Joe Biden? Look,
nothing.
When Bob Hur, H-U-R, the special prosecutor, interrogated Joe Biden, he said, we can't prosecute him. He's a withered, demented old man. Happens to be the president of the United States. They may conclude he can't be prosecuted. He's too mentally degraded. But what will this do to his legacy? What remains of a legacy would be tarnished beyond belief if his relatives testify under oath, we gave Joe this money.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, though. Pardoned everyone but himself. So, and like I said before, he's 80 fucking years old. Investigator Herr said he's too incompetent to go on trial. And dude's his days are numbered. So that's probably why it doesn't really fucking matter.
This is a special report. Here's Savannah Guthrie and Craig Melvin.
Hi there, everybody. Good morning. We come on the air with breaking news. President Biden, in his final hours, his final morning in office, has issued several high-profile pardons.
Among those pardoned this morning, Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, and the members and staff who served on the House committee that investigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol, including Liz Cheney.
And police officers who have spoken out as well from the Capitol Police. Let's go right to Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander. This just broke 10 minutes ago. Peter, what do you know?
Savannah, as NBC News first reported, President Biden, even yesterday, I'm told, was very seriously considering using this extraordinary presidential power to preemptively pardon some individuals. And this morning, as we are reporting, it is clear that he has decided to do just that in these final hours in office to guard against any potential revenge by the incoming Trump administration, by the incoming President Trump. President Biden just announcing, as you note, that he is pardoning Dr. Anthony Fauci, retired General Mark Milley, and members of the House committee that investigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol. That includes Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, Adam Kinzinger, among others, as well as Capitol and D.C. police who testified before that committee. I want to share with you part of what the president writes. He says, in part, our nation relies on dedicated,
big black dude that was actually antagonizing, the protesters. I guess, he testified. We know he lied. He wrote a book. But hey, scot-free.
Public servants every day. They are the lifeblood of our democracy. Yet alarmingly, he adds, public servants have been subjected to ongoing threats and intimidation for faithfully discharging their duties. Notably, his last comments in this statement add that these pardons, he says, should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing, he says, nor should acceptance by them be misconstrued as any admission of guilt for any offense. He says our nation, quote, owes these public servants a debt of gratitude for their tireless commitment to our country. Now, let's back up for a moment. President Trump, incoming President Trump, as you know, has been a fierce critic and has really railed against so many of those individuals that are receiving these pardons today. Most recently, in late December of last year, Donald Trump verbally attacked Liz Cheney, saying that she committed, quote, egregious and unthinkable acts of crime. That was December 22nd, less than a month ago. Of Mark Milley, in the past, he suggested that he deserved execution. And the fact that some of the actions he had taken in the past would have been worthy of execution. So to be clear, Joe Biden, some of his final actions now to preemptively pardon some of those high-profile figures. Savannah.
All right, we want to turn now to Kristen Welker, moderator of Meet the Press.
And fuck you, Kristen Welker. Fuck you, Anthony Fauci. How the fuck did you get a goddamn pardon? How the fuck did you get a goddamn pardon? Dr. Anthony Fauci. What's up, Dominique? Explain that. Not only did you help push the COVID, but you tested what? You did what to dogs? Little reminder of Dr. Anthony Fauci, who got a pardon.
Mr. Fauci, you were quoted on CBS Face the Nation saying it's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci?
I am a scientist who uses the scientific method to gain information.
Yes, you said you represent science.
Do
you represent science, Mr. Fauci? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No, that's not a yes or no answer.
Yes, it's a yes or no.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, we'll take that as you don't know what you represent.
Oh,
But this, as director of the NIH, you did sign off on these so-called scientific experiments. And as a dog lover, I want to tell you this is disgusting.
I own
and
5
evil,
dogs.
what you signed off on, and these experiments that happened to beagles paid for by the American taxpayer. And I want you to know Americans don't pay their taxes for animals to be tortured like this. So the type of science that you are representing, Mr. Fauci, is abhorrent, and it needs to stop. Mr. Fauci, you also represent the type of science that where you confess that you made up the COVID rules.
Oh, so he
including
I didn't hear what you
6
said.
feet social distancing and masking of children.
I never said I made anything up.
You admitted that you made it up. You made
I didn't
it up
say
as you went.
I made it up.
So are you saying this is fake news, Mr. Fauci?
I didn't say I made anything up.
What did you say?
I said that it is not based in science and it just appeared.
But this is science.
What does dogs have to do with anything that we're talking about today?
These are scientific experiments. Yeah. This is what you signed off
fucking
on.
Fucking head's being eaten alive, you stupid fuck.
The American people, they had to distance by 6 feet. They had to wear masks. But let's also talk a little bit further about the type of science that you represent. NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers.
Fuck George Soros. I don't know how the fuck you got a presidential medal of cocksucking, whatever the fuck it was. He didn't deserve one. Liz Cheney didn't deserve one. Hillary Clinton didn't deserve one. Fuck all those guys.
A fact that's been hidden. Let's talk about the fact about, is it right for scientists and doctors getting paid by the American people, government taxpayer paychecks, to get patents where they're paid millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in royalty fees, especially when the NIH and these government agencies, most powerful agencies in our country, are recommending medical suggestions and advice and making up guidelines like 6 feet distancing and masking of children. Do you think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor. You're Mr. Fauci in a few minutes. No,
microphone, you retard.
I want to talk about this right here.
Mr. Chairman,
Fauci,
objection.
I reclaim my time. I reclaim my time, Mr. Raskin.
Gentlelady will suspend.
Fuck you, Jamie Raskin, you dirty
In terms of the rules of decorum, are we allowed to deny that a doctor is a doctor
just
because we don't want him
to be a doctor?
Yes, because in my time, that man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked, and he belongs in prison.
Will suspend. The gentlelady should recognize the doctor as a doctor.
No. That's stupid.
Mr. Chairman, is this what we have become? Is this what we have devolved into? No decorum.
You know what? We can do that hearing about the poor men that were injected with syphilis, because I support you in that.
It is very prudent to wear a mask, and that's what I do.
Despite the eggnog?
Thank you. Well, you know, obviously, I mean, unless you have a special kind of mask that I don't know about, the fact is, sure, when you're eating and when you're drinking, take the mask down, but to the extent possible, keep it on when you're in an indoor congregate setting.
Dr. Fauci, as you advised the president about the possibility of new testing requirements for people coming into this country, does that include everybody?
The answer is yes, because you know that the new regulation, if you want to call it that, is that anybody and everybody who's coming into the country needs to get a test within 24 hours of getting on the plane to come here.
But what about people who don't take a plane and just these
border
crossers coming in huge numbers?
You know, that's a different issue. For example, when you talk, we still have Title 42 with regard to protection at the border. So there are protections at the border that you don't have the capability, as you know, of somebody getting on a plane, getting checked, looking at a passport. We don't have that there, but we can get some degree of mitigation.
Is there something to do to test these people somewhere else?
There is testing at the border under certain circumstances, as you know.
Michael. Doctor, two questions. First, for folks in California, I know this is only one case, but what's your message to them should they be particularly concerned? And secondly, with your emphasis on boosters, why not make a determination that it's in the interest of public health for the definition of fully vaccinated to include that additional dose?
Okay, so for the people in California, we've been in contact with the public health officials in California. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to say, but I'm pretty sure they're going to say just do all of the mitigation.
So, we have a general idea of what we're going to be talking about today. And this is a 3-part series done by Blaze TV on none other than Dr. Anthony Fauci. And one of my favorite congressmen and his interactions with Dr. Fauci, which I was going to do originally, is Dr. Rand Paul. Rand Paul. I don't know why. I went, Rand Paul. I'm a real boy.
Follow the science. Trust the experts. Do as you're told. These are the orders that were passed down on high.
Wait. What do you mean you can't hear what I'm hearing? The whole time? Well, that would be awkward.
From politicians, public health officials, faceless bureaucrats. They promised if we complied, if we followed the rules, if we did what we were told, they could keep us safe. But they didn't keep us safe. They fed us a story that over time just raised more and more questions. Where did the virus come from? How was it created? What role did the US government have in financing dangerous gain-of-function research? What don't they want us to know? What else aren't they telling us? Just asking these questions got you labeled a crank or a conspiracy theorist. And when that didn't work, they started censoring us. What were they so actively trying to hide? My name is Matt Kibbe, and I am obsessed with these questions. I'm obsessed with the very nature of the biggest public policy failure of my lifetime. We're going to get to the bottom of it by talking to the very smartest people I know, the same people that were censored by government, who were stifled, attempted to stop them from asking these questions. Together, we're going to get to the bottom of this web of deception and lies. It's time to pull back the curtain on the cover-up.
Absolutely critical. And if you can't social distance and you're outside, you have to wear a mask. The NIH and NIAID
anyway, how's y'all
categorically has not.
I've been talking shit about it in 2019, 2020, so we know I don't like it. 40 years. 40 years working with them. His retirement checks more than the president.
My quest has brought me to the Stanford School of Medicine. I'm going to talk with my friend Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who is one of the first epidemiologists to question the official narrative about COVID, and the world came down on him. Media went after him. The government went after him. We now know that Tony Fauci himself orchestrated a smear campaign against him. He's also the guy that turned me on to this idea that maybe this entire gain-of-function paradigm was more about biosecurity as opposed to public health. And I'm really looking forward to talking to him because I want to dig a little bit deeper and really understand, why did they go after him so hard? What were they trying to hide? The first time we talked, you pointed out that the explosion in funding for this kind of pandemic research happened in conjunction right after 9/11.
NBC News staff member actually had been tested positive for anthrax.
A Florida man has contracted a very rare and potentially deadly.
Listen, I don't know about this anthrax shit. I've literally had 13 anthrax shots. Pretty much the way it is, I kept getting boosters like a COVID because, well, I was doing what I was thinking was right, so I could go deploy and, you know, not get anthrax. By the way, they never had anthrax. My entire career. No anthrax. Never even came close to anything with anthrax, except for the anthrax shot. Maybe I have anthrax. Maybe I'm like Typhoid Mary.
form of anthrax.
Rare inhaled form of anthrax.
Anthrax, another infection, this time at NBC News in Rockefeller Plaza.
In just a week's time, we have had 4 confirmed cases of anthrax, all with media connections, and a number of anthrax scares as well.
ABC News.
In Nevada, to New Jersey tonight.
The U.S. House of Representatives is closing offices today.
And this is where Anthony Fauci accumulated so much power and money.
Speaking of closing offices today, if you work for the federal government and you've been working at home for the past however many fucking years, if you want to get paid, you have to go back to the office. Yeah, we're not paying you tax dollars to work from home. We probably only work half that time anyway, but get charged full time. Yeah. To quote the Hodge twins.
We appreciate your calling this hearing and giving us, my colleagues and I, the opportunity to address the threat of smallpox bioterrorism and how we may, as a group, defend against the bio.
Yo, now I'm really starting to hate this motherfucker really bad. You know? Because then he talked about smallpox. Guess which vaccine I also got? That shit sucked. Because it was like bubbling and shit for like, I don't know, maybe 7 to 10 days. Couldn't make it get in contact with anybody because it'll spread. Which I thought was complete bullshit because it wasn't smallpox. That's what they didn't tell you. It was a version of cowpox. And that's a phone call. God damn it.
Terrorist potential of this pathogen.
Much of that, an increase in budget, if any, did you receive after the September 11th related, or I should say the anthrax attacks last year?
Well, the budget process as it evolves took place following the September the 11th and anthrax attacks in the fall.
We have a chart from the National Institutes of Allergies and Infectious Diseases. It was $2.5 billion in 2002. When we look at fiscal year proposed for 2003, we're $4.4 billion.
Right, correct.
So almost doubled.
And it sort of put me down this path that this isn't just a failed government response to a dangerous pandemic. There's something much bigger going on.
I mean, I think there's stuff that I know for certain, and there's stuff I don't have visibility in. But what I know for certain is enough to be very worrying, right? So what happened was, over the course of the last 2 decades, the U.S. government and other governments, I'm sure, undertook this project to try to find the pathogens in the wild places of the world, bring them into labs, essentially weaponize them, like make them so that while in the wild they would only be able to infect bats or whatever, turn them into pathogens that can actually infect human cells and potentially even be spread from human to human. It was trying to do good.
Yeah.
The idea was, let's find which of these pathogens are likely to cause large outbreaks, and before that happens, we can predict which ones are most likely to do it because it only takes a few mutations or something to infect human cells, and then develop countermeasures like vaccines and other potential treatments.
So the best of intentions, still, I mean, to me, it's still kind of mad science-y. There's a hubris. There's, as Hayek might say, a fatal conceit to thinking that you really want to unleash some of these things because mistakes were bound to happen.
So I have an MD and a PhD in economics. From almost the first moment I started doing research, I was very interested in infectious disease. My first published paper was on HIV, and because I do economics, at the intersection between economics and medicine, a lot of it was about policy. So I published throughout my career a lot of papers on infectious disease. So when this pandemic hit, the World Health Organization, I forget exactly the date, put out a estimate in a press conference saying that the death rate from this virus is 3.4%.
Globally, about 3.4% of reported COVID-19 cases have died.
Devastating if true.
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 out of 100 people die from getting this. That is a disaster.
Yeah.
It's like nothing in modern peacetime history has an analog, and it's going to go everywhere, right? Because it's a virus that spreads very easily. It was really clear from the data that early on that was true. But that number, I had to be wrong, is what I thought. Because I thought back to what happened in the swine flu.
The World Health Organization has declared a swine flu pandemic as the disease continues to spread around the world.
Sounds unreal. Nearly half the population infected with swine flu, but the government believes that could happen.
President Obama decided to declare the epidemic a national emergency of swine flu, and around the country, people were lining up waiting for hours to get vaccinations.
In the swine flu in 2009, the World Health Organization put out an estimate saying, you know, this is a 4% death rate. I forget the exact number, but 4% death rate.
In cases where the H1N1 virus is widespread and circulating within the general community, countries must expect to see more cases of severe and fatal infections.
The problem was they observed the people that died from the swine flu, but they didn't observe the total set of people that had been infected. They only saw the people that were really sick enough to come to the hospital. That meant the death rate was something like 1 in 10,000, not 3 out of 100 or 4 out of 100. That defanged the swine flu pandemic. It went from this like disastrous thing that's going to kill everybody to, you know, it's another flu.
The uncomfortable implication of this is that public health officials don't care about what is true. It's seen as a virtue to overstate the danger. In other words, to lie about it. Whatever gets people to take the virus seriously.
At the time in January 2020, if you said that I'm not sure this number is right, then maybe it's less dangerous than people think. It's not maybe it's not 3.4%, maybe it's less than that. That was seen as a sin, a cardinal sin. It was crazy. It was absolutely outside of my experience. Like I started getting death threats. I didn't say one word about economics in these. It was just pure epidemiology. In March of 2020, I wrote an op-ed published in the Wall Street Journal. The death rate projections, just based on just simple back of the envelope math, could have ranged from, you know, 20,000 deaths to, you know, millions and millions and millions of deaths. And we wrote that in the Wall Street Journal piece, right? So we don't know this, and we called for a seroprevalence study of antibodies in the population.
You were just doing what you do, and you had done it before. The scientific process demands that people ask questions, particularly when you see half-baked scare figures that are designed to get people hysterical. But the whole world came down on you because you wrote an op-ed.
It was crazy. I would get accusations from friends on campus accusing me of valuing economics over lives. That framing was so unfair, right? Because if you lock down an economy, which is what we were planning to do, or we're talking about doing in March of 2020, you are going to kill people, especially poor people who cannot abide by having their lives disrupted by these kinds of disruptions to their basic economic activities, right? You have someone who's a worker in a market who sells coconuts for a living, and he buys the coconuts. His entire life savings is in the coconuts that he bought. And if he sells it, he can then buy more coconuts for the next day and live and use the rest to feed his family. You say you're locked down, that guy's going to starve. His family's going to starve. You say, okay, we're not going to trade anymore. We're going to lock down. All the supply chains are going to get disrupted. The pointy end of that is some poor guy in the middle of nowhere whose job depends on this, and now he earns less than $2 a day or something, goes into just dire poverty and starves. The decision was always lives versus lives.
So you ended up doing this study yourself and other colleagues, right? That's what the Santa Clara study was?
Yeah, the Santa Clara study was that study. There was a study to measure the antibody prevalence of SARS-CoV-2 antibodies in the population of Santa Clara County. The result was that 3% of Santa Clara County had COVID antibodies by early April 2020. That number indicates a few things. One, that the disease had already spread much far outside what people in public health realized at the time. Two, that the death rate was 0.2% in a community population. 0.22 out of 1,000, not 3.4%. And then three, that whatever we had done, these lockdowns had not actually stopped the disease from spreading, had not protected older people. That meant that we had made a tremendous mistake by locking down.
What was more hysterical response? Was it the op-ed, or was it the scientific research backing up the conjecture in the op-ed?
The op-ed was nothing compared to the response to the study itself. And the reaction of the scientific community was, it was vicious.
Andrew Gelman, Columbia University. I think the authors owe us all an apology. Alan Cole, Tax Foundation. I don't think there's a way to say this diplomatically. I have zero confidence in the Santa Clara study. Eric van Nimwegen, University of Basel. I might use this as an example in my class to show how not to do statistics.
There was hit pieces done about my family. There was a BuzzFeed News journalist who made false allegations about conflicts of interest. What I can say is that the study, because of the furious attack on it by the scientific community, by the press, essentially because we were saying that the policy was wrong, that the death rate is not so high, we shouldn't be alarmed, we should be essentially doing focused protection of vulnerable people. Yeah. That was seen as anathema. And Stanford itself attacked me. I lost like 30 pounds of anxiety. I couldn't eat. I forgot to sleep. It was really, and I felt like I couldn't protect my family because the news media is going after my wife. It was really stressful in summer 2020. But they finally conclude after months and months of just nonsense that we'd done nothing wrong.
Why did they do this to Jay? Was it groupthink? Was it a panic? Was it money? Or are these very important academic institutions fundamentally compromised by something else?
It was a combination of a lot of things going on all at once. One thing is very important is this difference in norms of discourse between public health and science. Right? In science, if you have some body, outside body, saying you can't look at that, you can't say that, you can't see that, you can't investigate that, you can't run an experiment about that, it restricts the ability for scientists to work and actually produce science. But for much of science, it's just free. Like I can say that no, there are many more cases than you think, and then I may be right or wrong, but I can then develop evidence around that. And you can argue with me by evidence. That is absolutely part of the ethos of science, this absolute freedom to ask questions and speak publicly about them. Right? That's how we convey our ideas to other scientists and to interested members of the public. Right? That's the ethic. In public health, the ethic is unanimity. Unanimity of messaging, control of messaging.
Wear a mask, social distance, wash your hands.
Be as forceful as possible in getting your citizenry to wear masks.
Social distancing is absolutely critical. And if you can't social distance and you're outside, you must wear a mask.
It's much more like politics in that sense, right? And it's seen as an act of, you're essentially being a traitor if you disagree with public health.
What they are spewing are egregious untruths. A euphemistic way of saying they're just lying. I mean, the data clearly show that these interventions don't work.
So you have this clash of norms. The problem is that the...
Oh, shit, my bad, guys.
Before... So you have this clash of norms. The problem is that the public health community had latched itself onto this narrative very early, before the scientific evidence was there about COVID, to actually have the ethical basis of the norm in place, right? Well, you have a new virus floating around. You have a tremendous number of questions, both about the policy and about the epidemiology and everything else about it. So you don't have the ethical basis for applying this sort of silencing norm, this anathemizing norm, where you say, well, if someone says contradicts public health, therefore they are heretics that need to be destroyed. Yeah. But yet that is the norm that was applied to almost anyone who questioned that narrative.
Nice building.
We've talked about this before, the centralization of the finance of science and health research. I got to believe that Stanford University raises a lot of money from government research grants.
Yeah, so I think something on the order of $700 million a year from the National Institute of Health alone. And not just Stanford, right? Hopkins, close to $1 billion in funding. And so you have like top officials at the National Institute of Health saying, this is the right narrative. It's not just Stanford institutionally, but also individuals inside Stanford who depend on the NIH for their scientific careers.
In any investigation, a good place to start is to follow the money. And there's a boatload of money flowing into the nation's top research institutions, coming from government agencies that don't like to be contradicted.
So someone like Tony Fauci, very famous, very loud in the press, comes and says, this is the right strategy, this is the right policy. And you get funding from his National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, or you get funding from the NIH. You don't want to cross him. You just don't.
So the signals from Fauci et al. Maybe created a pack of academic pit bulls that just naturally went after you. Attacked by the academic community, censored by his own university, savaged in the press, Jay was feeling pressure from all sides. What I have a hard time believing is that all of this is organic. Why would the whole world suddenly care about the opinions of one Stanford epidemiologist?
Well, there are emails from March 2020 from Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook to Fauci. A lot of it's redacted, but the sense is like Zuckerberg is offering cooperation with NIAID to reduce the amount of counter-narrative information on platforms like Facebook. Later, we learned that the direction actually often went in the other way. And in fact, the government was telling social media companies who and what to censor.
When I looked into the Twitter files, they confirmed that Jay was being blacklisted, his post being censored in response to pressure from the government. These sites that built their reputations on facilitating unprecedented mass communication had been captured. Instead of a public square where ideas could be heard and debated, they had become a propaganda arm of the state, with the FBI dictating the terms of discourse.
They need to create an illusion there was a consensus behind the lockdowns. And so for them, people like Tony Fauci and Francis Collins, when I wrote the Great Barrington Declaration with Martin Kulldorff of Harvard and Sunetra Gupta of Oxford, Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, it was a direct threat to their authority which they were using to create this illusion of consensus. We basically shattered the idea that there was a consensus. I mean, how could there be if scientists from Stanford, Harvard, and Oxford disagreed with Tony Fauci?
I'm starting to understand that what happened to Jay was no accident. It's a coordinated campaign to suppress and marginalize Jay and his colleagues. They were punching holes in the narrative Fauci was determined to sell. It's only natural that Fauci would punch back.
Francis Collins, 4 days after we wrote the declaration, wrote an email to Tony Fauci calling me a fringe epidemiologist. Then he called for a devastating takedown of the premises of the declaration. Tony Fauci responded with a Wired magazine article, essentially saying we wanted to let the virus rip, effectively calling me a grandma killer. They coordinate a propaganda campaign in order to demonize me.
From Greg Gonzalez to Francis Collins. Dear Francis.
Yo, did he pardon Mark Zuckerberg? Or the old owner of fucking Twitter? Jack something? Can't remember his name. Because they were all part of hiding the misinformation.
Saw your comments on the ludicrous Great Barrington Declaration and wanted to thank you for speaking out and doing it undiplomatically. After we saw what you had said about fringe epidemiology, we wondered why we were so nice in our op-ed. From Anthony Fauci to Deborah Birx. Deb, and so just a heads up, over the past week I have come out very publicly against the Great Barrington Declaration.
I started getting death threats again. I started getting, racist attacks, go home to your home country kind of things. Again, a tremendous abuse of power by people who have control of billions of dollars of funding and the livelihoods of scientists to climb the scientific hierarchy. And they abuse their power to marginalize me, Martin, Sunetra, almost anyone that signed the Great Barrington Declaration. The policies that we followed affected every single person on this earth. The poorest of the people on Earth, it harmed them in ways that we're never going to recover. Children, it harmed them in ways that, their schooling was disrupted for years in some cases. There should never have been any attempt to silence and censor people to reduce the discussion.
In my research on Stanford scholars like Jay, Scott Atlas, and John Ioannidis, I keep coming across this name, the Stanford Internet Observatory. I don't know what this is, but I'm hoping Jay can help me find out.
What we discovered is that it's not just the Stanford Internet Observatory, but other universities and other NGOs are funded by government organizations to create hit lists for censorship, to identify patterns of what people are saying on the internet, to identify themes that they deem to be misinformation. Like, for instance, a theme that I think that they deem to be misinformation is, if you have COVID and recover, do you have immunity, have some immunity? If you said that it does, that's misinformation. They would call that a theme. Here's how misinformation is spreading, funded by governments. Then governments go to social media companies and say, look, these independent entities in top universities are finding this is what's happening. You, the social media company, better suppress these people and these ideas, or else you're going to be killing people. And we're going to regulate you out of existence. That's the implied threat in these emails all the way across.
Jay and his allies are fighting social media censorship in the courts. But I'm learning that this is not just a First Amendment issue. There's a more nefarious ecosystem that has the patina of academic credibility that is in reality just another government censorship machine. Once you lock down and you create all this collateral damage that you've been talking about, the children and the lives lost and people devastated and suicide, the list goes on and on. You have to keep doubling down because you can never ever admit that that was not the right thing to do. And you certainly can't admit, I did that to distract us from this other thing that I did do.
So I modify it just one way. I don't think the lockdowns were an attempt to distract from the lab leak.
One of the great debates we're having and has embroiled this ongoing conversation is the debate between the lab leak theory versus the wet market theory. What are those two things?
The question is, how did this pandemic arise? The closest progenitors of this virus came out of a bat cave thousands of miles south of this lab in Wuhan, China. The pandemic first started in Wuhan, China. One theory of how this whole pandemic started was that in Wuhan, there are these markets where wildlife are sold for food and for other purposes, right? So the idea is that a bat or a pangolin or some other animal had a virus that was very close to the SARS-CoV-2 virus, had some mutation naturally. Then when that animal was sold to somebody who ate it or came in contact with it, it infected them, and then the virus spread everywhere. It mutated so that it could infect human cells. Theory 2 is that the virus came out of an intentional research program aimed at actually preventing pandemics. That intentional research program says, let's go to the wild places, find viruses and other pathogens, bring them into labs inside big cities, mutate them, add functionality to them to see if they might be able to infect others. And the reason you do that is that if you have a virus that has only a few mutations away from that capacity, you can develop vaccines early, you can develop countermeasures early. The risk is that the lab worker gets infected accidentally. They go home, they spread it to their wife, they spread it to their community members, and it spreads everywhere. A virus that never would have existed in nature only exists because we did this research, then is spread to the community elsewhere. So gain of function is a scientific experiment. You take a virus or some pathogen, let's say a virus, and you mutate it. Gain of function is a scientific experiment to ask, how much do we need to change this sequence so that it will infect humans?
And to be clear, gain of function could weaponize a virus that wouldn't have an affinity to infect humans and be devastating should it leak.
Now, what does it mean to leak out? It sounds like something nefarious, but it's not actually nefarious. It's just some lab worker getting tired, letting their mask slip, or their suit slip, and they're pipetting, and they get exposed to the pathogen in the lab. They go home and then they give it to their family members, and it spreads. That's what a lab leak actually is. It's not intentional. I'm going to send this out into the community. It's just a leak. And so, because those leaks have a history of happening, and you're doing this really dangerous work, the Cambridge Working Group said, let's not do this anymore.
I forget what year it was, but Fauci actually wrote an article defending gain-of-function research, I think in response to the Obama prohibition. And there's sort of a creepy sentence in here where, like, yes, a leak is possible, but the benefits obviously outweigh the costs.
How he knows that, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Right? So
he couldn't possibly know that, and I wonder if he would still say that. I hope not.
Well, I think Fauci's interesting because he was